Our top story tonight, a remarkable event in the Oval Office today. Radical Dem leaders Pelosi and Schumer debating with the president on camera in full view of the American people, talking about the president's demands for border security and the construction of that border wall. Both Pelosi and Schumer showed us why it's not a fair fight. They did so a number of times as they tried to move the debate into a private setting away from those prying cameras and those prying microphones. The president made it clear the discussion was all about transparency.
We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
it's called transparency.
Transparency. The president made it clear he will settle for nothing less than a border wall as part of his border security plan. And after those cameras were shut off, the president said progress was made.
Believe it or not, I think it was a very friendly meeting. You know, you saw the beginnings of it, but it actually worked out to be, I think, pretty good. I've actually liked them for a long period of time, and I respect them both. And we made a lot of progress.
A lot of progress. And joining us tonight, Congressman Andy Biggs. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. He's a member of the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
What do you think of that very public discussion among Pelosi, Schumer, and the president?
Well, you know, Lou, a lot of people asked for a transparent presidency, and they sure got it. And this was firsthand a great discussion, and I think President Trump really made the point very clear. We have a drug problem. We have a national security problem on the border, and it's the Republicans and President Trump that want to do something about it. And it's the other side that doesn't, and we have to get it done. We have to get it done.
Have to get it done. I have to tell you, again, as we examine what's going to happen with the Democrats, let's examine first what has happened in 2 years. Paul Ryan refused to build a wall. He refused to give the president additional money, $1.6 trillion for something called border security, an amorphous term that meant nothing in its ambiguity. So we're talking about a Republican Party that sold out to the open borders interests of the Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, the Koch brothers, Wall Street, you name it, the Western Growers Association. Come on. You know, yeah. This is really appalling to watch.
Well, Lou, I'll tell you something. One thing was said by Nancy Pelosi that I think was really true, and I don't think she meant to say it, but President Trump responded because she said we had the House, we had the Senate, and we should have done this. I don't disagree with that. We should have done this a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
You know, and I have a bill that's sitting out there right now, signed to 7 committees, that would build a border wall. Very simply, I think we should put that up clean and see what happens in the House.
Have you talked to the Speaker?
Yes, sir, I have.
Did he tell you to go to hell outright, or did he lie to your face?
Well, you know, he said we'd have the fight now, so we're having the fight now, and I'm in the fight, and I'm trying to urge him to put this to the floor because
well, you know, he's betrayed the president, the America First agenda upon which this president was elected. He's lied to the president. He's lied to the conference. He's lied to the American people. He's been in office for 8 months beyond his resignation announcement. I mean, how much sorrier can one man get than Paul Ryan?
Well, you know what? I think what would be helpful.
And by the way, the other part of that is, how dumb can any conference be to put up with him?
Well, you know, I've given you this analogy before, but if someone's not telling you the truth, but you keep believing them, then it's not that person's problem anymore. It's the folks who believe him. And so
there you go.
I think what we have to say is I turn this back to Mark Meadows, and I'm praying that he becomes the chief of staff, whether he wants it or not. I think he would do great because he can see and he can help the president with the conference, number one. Number two, he's going to get people around him that are going to help him facilitate moving that agenda forward. Now, of course, we're moving into a real disadvantage because if we don't do this by January 3rd at noon, if we don't pass a border wall by January 3rd at noon, the odds of us getting something done are not good, which is now why we've moved to this crisis point where now we're actually talking about shutting down the government.
Shutting down the government, and who's going to notice? I mean, the principal beneficiaries seem to be the estimated 22 to 30 million illegal immigrants in the country. I mean, who else are the real beneficiaries of leaving this government open? It's not the American working man and woman. It is not the entrepreneur who depends on government. I mean, just who the heck is the beneficiary, besides, of course, elected officials, including yourself, Congressman, who benefit from that paycheck and a nice, comfortable office in the nation's capital. I mean, the American people, in poll after poll after poll, are saying they've had a bellyful of what's passing for a government in this country.
Right. Well, and who can blame them? I mean, seriously. You know, I don't blame them. No, I don't blame them.
Least of all me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I look at it and I say, we've not delivered what we promised. And anytime you do that, then you lose elections.
Do you remember when Reince Priebus, the failed chief of staff, the former RNC chairman, I mean, he conducted a survey after the election of 2012 in which Mitt Romney and, did I mention, Paul Ryan were thrashed in President Obama's reelection effort. And that autopsy, as they called it, revealed all of the weaknesses of the Republican Party. There should be an autopsy of this Congress, the Republican conference, because, my God, at least, you know, if it's going to be a corpse, at least it should be understood what happened to it and who did the damage. Do you agree?
Don't disagree. I don't disagree with you. We need to find out what happened and really, you know, you have to take honest stock, look in the mirror. You know, is it mine, Andy Biggs' fault? Whose fault is this that we're now moving into a scenario where the American people didn't trust us to continue? Right. That's really what it is. They didn't trust us to continue because there were promises made that were not kept.
And the leadership of your conference absolutely undercut this president and threw away 40, in my opinion, 40 seats that could have been won in a House that could have been controlled by the Republicans were it not for Paul Ryan. Congressman Andy Biggs, thanks for being with us. Always good to talk with you.